right, everyone, get ready, because today we're taking a deep dive into something that's super important for all of us.
Even if it might not be the most exciting topic.
Exactly. We're talking about long-term care insurance.
Yeah.
That thing you think you should probably be thinking about,
hmm
but maybe you've been putting it off.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
Well, get this. Based on the research we've got here, the average cost of staying in a nursing home can be over $100,000 per year.
Whoa.
And in-home care,
Still a big chunk of change.
still a whopping $50,000 annually. So yeah, pretty eye-opening figures.
Definitely attention grabbing, and for good reason. I mean, we all know we're going to get older,
Yay.
but those costs associated with, needing care later in life, people don't always realize how much it can be.
That's exactly why we're doing this deep dive. We're not here to scare anyone.
Right.
We're here to arm ourselves with knowledge so we can plan ahead.
Absolutely.
And protect our independence as we, age gracefully.
It's all about having the right information and making smart choices.
Yeah.
Ones that really make sense for you and your situation.
So let's get down to brass tacks.
Okay.
What exactly is long-term care insurance? I have a feeling it's not like our regular health insurance.
Yeah, you're right. It's not. Think of it this way. Regular health insurance, that's for doctor's visits, hospital stays, that sort of thing.
Gotcha.
But long-term care insurance is specifically for when you need help with daily activities.
Okay, so I'm picturing things like help with bathing, getting dressed, eating, the things we do every day without even thinking about.
Exactly. Those everyday things that as we get older, sometimes we need a little extra help with. And it's all about maintaining your quality of life and independence as things change.
And it's not just limited to someone coming to your house, right?
Yeah.
It can cover other types of care.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking a whole range of services.
Yeah.
In-home care, where someone helps with those daily tasks, meal prep, even light housekeeping. And then, of course, there's assisted living facilities or maybe even a nursing home and even adult daycare programs.
Okay, so it's a pretty wide spectrum of care options, but we can't ignore those costs.
Yeah.
$100,000 for a nursing home, I mean, that's enough to wipe out a lot of people's savings.
You're not kidding. And it's not just for a short time either. That's every year.
Right.
The financial burden, I mean, it can be huge.
Yeah.
Not just for the individual, but for their families too.
That's a good point.
Who often end up helping out.
Yeah, definitely something to consider. Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty of policies,
Sure.
I got to address something I hear all the time.
Okay.
Medicare will cover my long-term care needs, right? But from what I'm seeing, that's not totally true.
It's a very common misconception, for sure. Medicare is really focused on those short-term needs.
Okay.
Like, say, you need rehab after surgery or you have a hospital stay. But those extended stays in nursing homes or the kind of ongoing in-home care we're talking about,
Yeah.
Medicare won't cover that.
And I bet another myth we can debunk right now is that whole, I'm too young to worry about this thing.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Like long-term care is way down the road, right?
Well, not necessarily. Here's the thing. The younger you are when you get long-term care insurance, the lower those premiums are going to be. Waiting can actually cost you literally.
Really?
And we're not even talking about health changes that can happen as you get older, which could make getting coverage, well, much harder or even impossible.
So there are definitely some advantages to thinking about this sooner rather than later.
Big time.
Okay, so we've tackled some of the misconceptions, which I admit has been a little bit of a downer so far.
Yeah, it can be a tough topic.
But let's switch gears and talk about the good stuff.
Yeah.
The benefits of having long-term care insurance.
Okay, let's get positive.
Yeah.
I mean, first and foremost, it's about protecting all that money you've worked so hard to save. Think about it. You spend your whole life building a nest egg, and then bam, unexpected care costs come along and threaten to wipe it all out. Long-term care insurance is like a safety net.
I like that analogy.
It helps you keep your financial security.
And just knowing you have that cushion, that peace of mind, that's got to be worth something, right?
It's huge.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the money either. It's also about having choices and control over your care. You get to decide if you want care in your own home or in a facility, knowing you've got access to quality care providers.
So it's about autonomy, being able to make those decisions for yourself as you age.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the impact on your loved ones.
Right. That's a huge factor, too.
Long-term care insurance can really ease the burden on your family, financially, of course, but also emotionally.
Right.
They won't have to worry about becoming your full-time caregiver or making tough financial decisions just to support you.
That's a really powerful point. So, with all this in mind, who do you think benefits the most from long-term care insurance? Is it for everyone?
It's definitely something everyone over 50 should at least consider and explore their options,
Okay.
but it's especially beneficial for folks who are proactive about their healthcare.
Hmm.
They want to protect their finances, make sure they're set for the future.
Right.
And anyone with a family history of chronic illnesses or disabilities, they should absolutely be thinking about this.
Because they might be more likely to need care at some point.
Exactly. It all comes down to your individual situation and planning accordingly.
All right, so we've established that planning is key here.
Yeah.
But let's get down to the nuts and bolts. How does this whole thing actually work? Like, when does the insurance actually kick in?
That's where those activities of daily living, or ADLs, come into play.
Okay, ADLs, we've touched on this a little bit, but remind me again, what are those?
Sure. They're the basic things we do every day to take care of ourselves. Bathing, dressing, eating, using the bathroom, transferring, like getting in and out of bed or a chair, and maintaining continence.
So pretty basic stuff that, honestly, most of us don't even think about right now.
It's true. But as we age, or if our health changes, these simple activities can get tough, maybe even impossible, to do on our own. And that's when that long-term care insurance steps in.
Okay, I'm starting to see how it all connects, but let's say I'm having trouble with a couple of these ADLs, like dressing and bathing. Does that automatically mean the insurance will start covering help?
Well, not necessarily. Remember that 2 ADL threshold we talked about?
Right.
Most policies say you need substantial assistance with at least 2 of these activities
Okay,
before those benefits kick in.
got it. That 2 ADL rule. But what does substantial assistance actually mean? Can you paint a clearer picture for us?
Of course, like if you just need help with a couple of buttons on your shirt, that wouldn't count.
Okay.
It has to be a significant loss of ability to do the task safely on your own. Imagine you can't get dressed for, say, your granddaughter's wedding because you just can't manage those buttons or zippers.
Oh, wow, yeah.
That's the level we're talking about.
Okay, that makes it much clearer. So, in that scenario, needing someone to completely dress you would likely trigger the benefits.
Exactly. We're not talking about minor inconveniences or just needing a little help here and there.
It's got to be a real inability to do those essential things without major support.
That's it. But you bring up a good point. What about those situations where you need help with something that's not on that list of 6 core ADLs?
Right.
Let's say you can't cook safely anymore or manage your medications. Would those be covered?
That's a great question.
It is, and it shows why it's so important to understand your policy. So yeah, those 6 ADLs, they're the standard triggers,
Right.
but some policies might consider additional activities. They call them instrumental activities of daily living, or IEDLs. Things like cooking, handling finances, shopping, taking medication, that kind of stuff.
So there's a little bit of wiggle room depending on the specific policy.
Exactly. You really want to look closely at those policy documents, understand what's covered, what those requirements are for triggering benefits, all of that.
Makes sense. So let's go back to those core ADLs for a sec. Can you walk us through some real-life examples, show how needing help with these activities could really impact someone's life?
Absolutely. Let's start with bathing. Imagine you can't safely get in or out of the tub or shower anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe you need someone to physically help you, or you have to make those expensive changes to your bathroom.
Right.
Grab bars, a walk-in shower. Without support, something as simple as bathing becomes a big hurdle.
I can see how that could become a real struggle every day.
It can be. Or think about dressing. You can't button your clothes, zip your pants, tie your shoes. That impacts your ability to get ready, to be independent. Maybe even keeps you from going out, socializing, or seeing family.
And then there's eating. Not being able to feed yourself, that's a pretty big deal, wouldn't you say?
Huge. It could mean needing help cutting food, using utensils, or even having to rely on someone to completely feed you. It affects your independence, your nutrition, everything.
Wow, hearing these examples really brings those ADLs to life. I never realized how much we rely on these abilities, every single day.
It's easy to take them for granted. And the same goes for the other ADLs, toileting, transferring, continence. They're all fundamental parts of taking care of ourselves. And they can become incredibly difficult if you lose the ability to manage them on your own.
So these ADLs aren't just some abstract concept in a policy document. They represent real challenges.
Absolutely. That's exactly why long-term care insurance focuses on these activities. They're often the first signs that someone might need serious help with daily living.
And it's why understanding them is so important when you're considering this type of insurance. It goes beyond finances. It's about keeping your dignity, your quality of life as you age.
You got it. By recognizing the potential impact of needing help with ADLs, you can make more informed decisions about your long-term care planning and choose a policy that really fits your needs.
Okay, so we've got a good handle on those all-important ADLs now. But now I'm wondering, how do we actually go about choosing the right long-term care insurance policy for our own unique situation? There's so much to consider.
There is. Selecting a policy isn't one size fits all. There are a lot of factors to weigh, and that's exactly what we'll be diving into in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds like we're about to get the knowledge we need to make some smart choices about our long-term care future. Stay tuned, everyone. We'll be right back after a quick break.
Welcome back to our deep dive all about long-term care insurance.
Okay, so before we got sidetracked there, we were about to really get into those activities of daily living
Oh yeah, those
and
ADL.
how they work with long-term care insurance.
They're really the key
Yeah.
to unlocking those benefits when you need them.
So just to make sure we're all on the same page, can you remind us again what those essential activities actually are?
You bet. ADLs are those basic things we do every day to take care of ourselves. The big six that most policies focus on. Bathing, dressing, eating, using the toilet, transferring, like getting in and out of bed or a chair, and continence.
So those are the things, most of us probably don't even think about right now.
True for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
But as we age, or if we have some health challenges, these simple things can get harder, maybe even impossible to do alone.
And that's where the long-term care insurance comes in.
Exactly.
Okay, I get it. But let's say I'm having trouble with a couple of these ADLs, like maybe dressing and bathing. Does that automatically mean my insurance kicks in and covers the cost of someone to help me?
Well, not so fast. You got to remember that 2 ADL threshold we talked about earlier.
Oh, right, that 2 ADL rule.
Most policies require that you need help with at least 2 of these activities, and it's got to be substantial assistance.
Okay, substantial assistance. What does that actually mean? Can you give us a clearer idea?
Sure thing. It's not like you need help with a button or two on your shirt. It has to be that you really can't do it safely on your own.
Right.
Like imagine you can't get dressed for your granddaughter's wedding because you just can't handle those buttons or zippers.
Wow. Yeah.
That's the kind of situation we're talking about.
Okay, that makes it a lot clearer.
Yeah.
So in that example, needing someone to help you get completely dressed, that would probably trigger the benefits.
Exactly. It's not about, little inconveniences or needing a hand every now and then. It's about really not being able to do those essential things without help.
Gotcha. But what about situations where you need assistance with something that's not on that list of 6 core ADLs? Like, what if you can't cook safely anymore or manage your medications? Is that covered?
That's a really good question, and it shows why it's so important to understand what's in your policy. Those 6 ADLs, those are kind of the standard triggers,
Yeah.
but some policies might take into account additional activities. They call them instrumental activities of daily living, or IADLs. Things like cooking, managing your finances, shopping, taking your medications, that sort of thing.
So there's some flexibility there, depending on the specific policy.
Right. It all comes down to the details of your policy.
Mm-hmm.
What's covered, what those requirements are. You really have to know what you're getting into.
Makes sense. But let's circle back to those core ADLs for a minute. Could you walk us through some real-life scenarios, like how needing help with these activities could actually impact someone's daily life?
Sure, no problem. Let's take bathing, for example.
Right.
Imagine you can't get in or out of the tub or shower safely anymore.
Right.
Maybe you need someone to physically help you? Or you have to make expensive modifications to your bathroom, like grab bars or a walk-in shower. Suddenly, something as simple as taking a bath becomes a big problem.
I see how that could turn into a daily struggle.
Absolutely. Or think about getting dressed. If you can't button your clothes, zip your pants, or tie your shoes, that can make it hard to get ready for the day, to stay independent. It might even keep you from going out, being social, seeing family and friends.
And then there's eating, not being able to feed yourself. That's a big one, right?
Huge. It could mean needing help with cutting your food, using utensils, maybe even needing someone to feed you completely. It impacts your independence, your nutrition, your whole well-being.
Wow, hearing these examples, it really puts those ADLs into perspective. I never really thought about how much we depend on these, seemingly simple abilities every single day.
You're right, it's easy to take them for granted. And that goes for all those ADLs, toileting, transferring, continence. These are all those basic things we do to take care of ourselves. And if you can't do them on your own, it can be really, really tough.
So they're not just abstract ideas in a policy document. These are real-life challenges.
Exactly. And that's why long-term care insurance is all about these activities. They're often the first sign that someone needs help with daily living.
And that's why it's so important to understand them when you're thinking about this type of insurance. It's about more than just the financial side. It's about maintaining your dignity and your quality of life as you get older.
That's the key takeaway. By understanding how much these ADLs matter, you can make smarter choices about your long-term care planning and pick a policy that truly meets your needs.
Okay, so we've got a solid grasp on those ADLs now, but now I'm curious, how do we actually choose the right long-term care insurance policy for our individual circumstances? There seems to be a lot to consider.
You're telling me picking a policy is not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. There are several factors to weigh, and we'll dive into those details right after the break.
Sounds like we're about to get the information we need to make informed choices about our long-term care future. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back. And we are back with the last part of our deep dive on long-term care insurance.
And I think this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground, like what long-term care even is, and those activities of daily living, the ADLs
Those are important.
that can trigger those insurance benefits.
Huge.
But now, the million-dollar question, how do you actually choose a policy? Because there are a ton of options out there.
Right. It can be overwhelming.
It really can. So where do we even start? What's the first step?
First things first, you got to think about you.
Okay.
Before you even look at policies,
Okay.
take a step back and assess your own needs and your situation.
So some self-reflection is in order. What kind of things should we be considering?
Think about your health right now, your family history. Are there any chronic illnesses that run in the family? And then, of course, your financial situation.
So are we worried about wiping out our savings if we need care down the line? Do we have family members who might become caregivers?
Exactly. It's all about getting a clear picture of your life and your potential needs before you jump into all those policy details.
Got it. So once we have a handle on our own personal situation, what's next?
All right, then we can start looking at the different policy features because not all long-term care insurance is the same.
Ooh, insider info. What are some of those key features we need to pay attention to?
One of the big ones is the daily benefit amount. That's how much the policy will pay each day to cover your care costs.
So if a nursing home in my area costs, let's say, $250 a day, I want a policy that covers at least that much.
Ideally, yeah, you want to make sure that benefit amount matches the actual cost of care where you live, so you're not stuck paying the difference out of pocket.
Makes sense. Okay, what else should we be looking for?
Another big one is the benefit period. That's how long the policy will actually pay out benefits. Could be a few years or even your whole lifetime.
Okay, so if I choose a 5-year benefit period and I end up needing care for longer than that, I'm on my own.
That's the risk. Longer benefit periods give you more security, but of course they usually come with higher premiums.
There's always a trade-off. More coverage, more cost.
You got it. It's all about finding that right balance for your own needs and your budget. And speaking of balancing things, don't forget about the elimination period, that waiting period before your benefits actually start.
Oh, right, that buffer time. So a shorter elimination period means I get help sooner, but it might also mean higher premiums.
You're catching on quick. It's all about weighing the pros and cons. And while we're talking about what's covered, make sure you really look at the types of care that are included in the policy.
Because I'm guessing not all policies cover everything equally.
You guessed it. Some might have restrictions on certain types of care, or they might have different reimbursement rates for, say, in-home care versus assisted living.
Sounds like we need to read that fine print carefully.
Always a good idea. And one last thing. Don't forget to compare premiums from different insurance companies.
Because those prices can vary a lot, right?
Big time. Premiums can change based on how old you are, your health, the coverage you choose, all sorts of factors. It's worth shopping around and getting quotes from several different insurers.
Okay, so to recap, choosing long-term care insurance is really about understanding yourself, comparing all the features, and finding that balance between how much coverage you need and what you can afford.
Exactly. It's all about having the power to navigate getting older with dignity, with independence, knowing you've got a plan.
Well, I feel like we've really broken down this whole long-term care insurance thing. We talked about why planning is so important, what to look for in a policy, and we even busted some of those common myths.
And I think the key takeaway for me is that knowledge really is power in this case. By understanding this complex topic, we can make those informed choices that give us peace of mind for the future.
So to everyone listening out there, we've given you the tools. Now it's time to use them. Don't wait until it's too late. Start planning for your future today.
Remember, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago.
Right.
The second best time is now.
That's some real wisdom right there. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time for another one.